Hi everyone and welcome back to Mental Models for Managing Change. I am Ali Juma and as always, I'm really glad you're tuning in. In our last episode, we explored the ladder of inference, a model that helps us question the assumptions that quietly shape our actions. That was all about how we think before we act. Today we shift gears from reflection to focus. But before we dive in, let's quickly revisit what a mental model actually is. A mental model is a way of seeing, a mental framework that helps us interpret complexity, solve problems, and make better decisions. You can think of it as a map for navigating uncertainty. And just like any map, the clearer it is, the more confident we become in finding our way forward. Which brings us to today's model, the Pareto Principle, often called the 80-20 rule. In a world where everything feels urgent and important, this model reminds us not all effort is equal. Where it comes from, the Pareto Principle is named after the Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto, who in the late 1800s noticed that 80% of Italy's land was owned by just 20% of the population. Since then, the same pattern has shown up in many systems. 80% of customer complaints often come from 20% of the causes. 80% of a company's profits come from 20% of its products. In your own to-do list, 80% of your progress likely comes from 20% of your tasks. And in change management, 80% of resistance might stem from 20% of misunderstood impacts. It is not about the numbers being exact. It is about recognizing that a small number of inputs often drive a large portion of results. Why it matters in change? In change work, we often try to do everything, fix every process, run every engagement, and answer every email. But this model invites us to ask, what is the 20% of effort that creates 80% of the shift? Where are we trying too hard for too little gain? Maybe it is the 3 leaders who shape the culture for everyone else. Maybe it is one outdated workflow that causes most of the friction. Maybe it is a handful of conversations that would unlock trust across the board. Pareto helps us shift from being busy to being effective. Here's a story from the field. I once worked with a team launching a new student platform across a university. The project team was drowning in feedback, trying to please everyone, tweak every feature, respond to every user request. So we paused and we asked, what's really causing the most pain right now? Turned out 80% of negative feedback came from one key step in onboarding flow. A small but critical moment that confused users right at the start. Once we focused on 20%, not only did satisfaction go up, but support tickets dropped, word of mouth improved, and the team had more breathing room to focus on long-term features. How to use it? Here are 3 ways to apply the Pareto Principle in your own change work. 1. Run a quick 80-20 scan. Look at your project plan, engagement strategy, or even stakeholder list and ask, which small number of actions or voices will have the biggest impact? 2. Prioritize action over perfection. Let go of doing everything well. Focus on doing the vital few things exceptionally. 3. Use it in resistance. Not every concern needs equal airtime. Find the root issues driving the loudest or most consistent pushback. That's where the real leverage is. So here's your reflection for the week. Think of a change you're leading or part of right now. Ask, where am I putting 80% of my effort for 20% of the impact? Then flip it. Where could 20% of thoughtful energy create most of the momentum? The truth is we can't do it all and we're not meant to, but we can do things that matter most. And that's where real change begins. Thanks again for tuning in to Mental Models for Managing Change. In our next episode, we'll build on this idea with a model that helps us take even more ownership, especially when things feel out of control. It is called the Circle of Control, Influence, and Concern. And it is a game changer for how we manage pressure, uncertainty, and scope in complex change. Until then, I'll leave you with this. Doing more is not the same as doing what matters. Until next time. And one more thing. If you're enjoying this mini-series and want to go deeper into the human side of change, conversations about leadership, culture, and the psychology of transformation, you might enjoy some of the longer episodes on my other podcast feed, The Inner Game of Change. It is where I sit down with thinkers, leaders, and practitioners to explore what really takes to lead the change from inside out. You'll find those episodes right here in the same feed. Thanks again, and talk soon.